Am I the asshole for telling my sister she's ridiculous for divorcing her husband over a TikTok prank? My 24 male sister, 32 female, was married to a guy, 35 male, for 3 years until they separated 2 months ago over a TikTok prank he pulled. Although none of our family cares about social media, I've always thought of her husband as nice, funny man. It's great to be in his company, and I therefore think the divorce is ridiculous over something that was no more than a mistake. To give an account of what happened, my brother-in-law, who is involved in TikTok, pulled a prank on my sister's 15 male son. The prank culminated in my nephew falling over and banging his head, which is why she separated from him. He had to be rushed to the hospital where he underwent treatment, and now he has brain damage. He now needs help eating due to impaired motor control, has limited speech. If you ask him something, he'll stare at you until my sister gets on her knees to ask him calmly what he needs. He's easily irritable, and when I look at him, all I can see is his 7-year-old self masquerading in a 15-year-old's body. Now, these symptoms are likely permanent and are of course awful, but it was a mistake on behalf of the husband. I believe that divorce is way too harsh for a mistake, and instead they should have negotiated boundaries and disallowed TikTok in the house or something. Her husband was the only one who used it. I've tried to keep my dislike of the divorce decisions to myself because I'm secretly mourning the loss of my brother-in-law. We watched football together and everything. However, when discussing the incident with her yesterday, I told her that she was absolutely ridiculous for divorcing her husband over something that is essentially a mistake, and that she should reconsider her options, considering the first one was clearly emotionally driven. My sister told me that I'm free to marry him, and my mother also interjected and, despite liking my brother-in-law before, told me that I have no say in my sister's life and told me that my precious brother-in-law ruined my nephew's life with his incompetence. I yelled at them and told them that society's inability to forgive mistakes is the reason why we're in this mess, and they eventually kicked me out when the argument ensued for 10 minutes longer. I thought I was being reasonable. However, my girlfriend is also on their side. Am I the asshole?
Okay, I feel like this might be one of the hardest ones we've ever done because we need to know the circumstance.
I don't at all.
Do you have an opinion?
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
I do not think this was the first time he's tried to pull a funny TikTok prank. I can't imagine you just go from 0 to 100. I'm sure this was kind of a running thing where it's like, hey, please stop. Not into the TikTok pranks. And then this one resulted in permanent brain damage. I don't know what the intention of the prank was, but I think when someone hurts you and your child so deeply, so badly, I think even if you love that person, if you recognize this is something you're never going to be able to get over, I think it's fair. Bye. Like, I'm always going to look at you and look at what you did to my child.
Right, but the context of the prank is so key in this. If it was just simply like a pop out or a loud noise or like some scare prank or something, and someone trips and falls in a really terrible way, then a really hot take, 2 hot takes, 3 hot takes today, is then she's taking out the emotions of how terrible of the situation now, of what has happened. She's now taking that out on the relationship to be able to put blame somewhere, even if there's no place to technically put the blame, depending on the context of the prank.
Yeah, I mean,
because mistakes do happen.
Yeah.
You could pull a prank like, oh, I did this, and then it has some terribly not foreseeable adverse consequence. And though, yes, it is annoying that it came from a prank and the prank didn't have to happen. It's just one of those freak things. I mean, we've all done that where you're like all having a good time and something dumb happens and then someone actually gets hurt and it's like, oh shit. Like, and this is an extreme, like, I can't even imagine having this happen to anybody, but I think it relies so much on the context of the prank. Like, did he actually go and be like, haha, and push him down a flight of stairs? Because that's a lot different than, oh, I'm doing something. And then like the unforeseeable, which I think is the key word.
Yeah.
Consequence is he falls and gets this hurt.
So let me ask you this. What is your take on this? Like, I hear everything you're saying, but so you think she was an asshole for jumping to divorce?
I can't make a decision until I know the
more
prank.
Context.
Do we have any more?
No, the account's been suspended. I can't see any, I don't see any comments from OP while I'm scanning quickly.
Because I'll clarify. If it was one of those pranks where it was totally unnecessary and you could infer the risk of someone getting hurt, then yes, I would be done in the relationship too, because that's just idiotic. Why would you put someone at risk for something so dumb? But if you totally could not foresee it, like it's very unreasonable to consider that someone would get this hurt from whatever action you were doing, then I don't see how you could put all that blame on that person.
Based on the severity of his injuries, like I was quick scrolling through the comments and like I kept seeing permanent brain damage in all caps, and like commenters just from typing that is mentioned 20 times, and that's like if they use the right spelling. And I can't imagine like a jump scare type prank is going to result in permanent brain damage.
It's possible.
Well, someone has died just from falling down the stairs. Like, I forget it. I think it's someone you or Lauren knew from college.
Oh,
like,
no, I don't.
Somebody knows somebody who fell down the stairs, hit their head, was fine, was rushed to the doctor or like the ER for like a concussion or something. They
Had a brain
discharged
bleed.
them, died of a brain bleed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So and all they did was fall down the stairs. They missed a step. So to me, I know I'm being very devil's advocate, but
Accidents happen.
accidents, like if Justin is, to your point, if he was doing a prank and it just like a door opened, which knocked this person down the stairs, they could have severe injuries from something that wasn't intended.
Yeah.
And I'll just say this, like, it's interesting because we all have a different take on this, and they're probably all considered a hot take because my take on this is kind of a blend of both of yours. And for me, those details don't matter to me because I think that, to touch on your point earlier, who's to decide what is an emotional or non-emotional reason to divorce somebody? It's your marriage. And you kind of touched on this earlier, regardless of the intention, the prank, the severity, the unforeseeable, foreseeable factors. If this woman can't look at her husband the same way and she harbors resent for him, then why would you stay in that marriage?
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, it's really shitty. And I think it's by some people's, standards, an extreme punishment or an extreme consequence, but so be it then. Because if this woman is so hurt and can never look at her husband the same way, will always resent him no matter what happens, then for the both of their sakes,
it's better they're done.
It's better than they're not in the same marriage. So that's why these little details actually don't really matter, in my opinion. What matters is, can she move past it? Can she forgive him?
That is true.
Him?
I think,
that's kind of how I look at it.
I think I got on the track of like, is the guy who did the prank the asshole?
Right.
That's kind
so
of,
when you were talking, I was like, you're actually answering a different question.
Yeah. But we can all agree, like, if it was ill intended, then of course, like,
It's a whole different question. But we're actually, none of us are answering the question.
I know, that's true.
Am I the asshole for calling her ridiculous?
Which, it's not your life. It's not your marriage. It's not your child. And boo-hoo, you can't watch football with your brother-in-law.
Yeah, I was thinking the
Go
same.
to a fucking sports bar.
Yeah.
Get a friend.
It's funny. We were all kind of not answering the original.
We got lost in the sauce.
Well, I knew from the get-go, I was like, I know that we're not going to even give that attention because we're so focused on the other elements that are kind of shining that. But it's hard to answer that question too, because are you an asshole for calling your sister ridiculous? If I had to answer that, because who are you to decide what's ridiculous in her marriage?
Well, and you're not in her marriage. I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like I said, I'm like, I don't believe this was the first prank. I can imagine this didn't go 0 to 100. So for her, this could have been the final devastating straw. And so who knows what was going on behind closed doors? And it's like, who are you to speak? You're not in it.
I pulled this train way off track.
No, you didn't. I like where you went.
It's a
You
good
made great
perspective.
points. And I like how passionate you got about like the unforeseeable, because everyone's thinking it like, well, what was the prank? How direct was the injury? But it's kind of like all of that is like kind of moot in the grand scheme of things, because regardless if it was a total perfect storm, weird one-off, if the wife, if she can't look at her husband the same way, and she will always harbor resentment and anger, and
it's her boundary to have. And it's totally fair. Yeah. People ate him up in the comments. But one, I think that was really interesting.
It is really terrible though.
It's so sad.
If I'm him, I don't know how. I would probably never want to use the TikTok app ever again.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could live with yourself. He was 15. His whole life is so changed. Yeah. But someone comments, and it's a ways down. I found it just by searching permanent brain damage, but you're the asshole. Permanent brain damage is the limit to most people's ability to forgive.
Well,
But I think your point is interesting because I think, you look at a lot of situations, or I don't know, I think it's used for a lot of movie plots. It's like a group of teenagers was driving home from a party and a drunk driver hit him and the one survived, but the rest of the town hates the one that was driving.
Right.
And I think that does come up in a lot of our stuff where, we have misplaced blame.
Yeah.
And accidents do happen. But yeah, I think back to OP actually asking, am I the asshole for telling my sister she's ridiculous for divorcing her husband? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not your marriage.
Right. And yes, I'm falling further into a little hole right now. I just want to tuck away and let the show continue as if I wasn't here. But
What?
It's making more sense to me because then you could theorize.
Right.
If they had a perfect relationship and this was a freak weird accident mistake, yes, it's still her call how she wants to interpret those emotions. But you'd think that then it wouldn't be a question of okay, we need to split up. It's obviously due to bigger circumstances.
Yeah.
Or a super malicious prank, which could be unforgivable.
Right.
But if it weren't any of those, then we wouldn't be talking about the divorce. We'd be talking more about the injuries and the prank itself, maybe.
Right. And I think that the theme, if you boil everything down, it's forgiveness. That's the concept of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Is what's really at play here. And I mean, it's funny. That's happened a bunch of times on this show in episodes where I've been listening to episodes that I'm not even on, and I'll be like, do they realize that they're actually not even focused on the question anymore?
Because we all hear so many different things when we're listening, and then we get so fixated on that one point and we forget about the rest.
We all three heard different things. Different things resonated with all three of us. And it just goes to show how differing opinions that was at play here.
Or listening with your triggers.
Yeah.
Mine's
your
pranks.
bias.
I hate pranks.
Clearly.
I fucking hate pranks.
I don't like pranks either, actually. So I dated somebody who loved to kind of mess with me and scare me and spook me and do pranks. And it actually got to a point where I was like, this could lead to a breakup. And that sounds so funny, but
you'd be out right away.
I couldn't I hated it. I started to get really frustrated, and I was like,
you just can't live comfortably. I think if you have a prankster in your life, you're always looking over your shoulder. You're never truly comfortable.
Yeah,
at
that's
least
a good
based
point.
on my experience. And I got enough cortisol as it is. I don't need any more.
right.
Have you seen those Australian guys on TikTok? I know we're going way off, but
Let's hear it.
those 3 guys where they literally just cannot, they sit on the couch in their living room and it explodes.
Oh,
or
hell
like
no.
and it's
Jackass
just
type stuff.
kind of, and it's just like, dude,
It's exhausting.
I know you get views, but don't you really love living like that?
No.
Always
No.
on edge, like you guys are about to do some fucked up shit. You know what I mean?
I'd hate that. They must be adrenaline junkies and they just need it in their day to day.
I don't understand it.
I don't either.
Also, I don't know how the Jackass guys never got I guess the one. Never mind.
Never what got
Like how you
injured.
watch those movies and they just fall in ways where you're like, yep, they're fucked up.
And
then they're just like, ha, ha, ha,
Yeah.
ha. And it's like, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, even they said though, in one of the recent ones we watched, it was 4.5 or whatever, they said, I live my life constantly on edge now.
Yeah.
They were even doing interviews where people were asking them how was filming this show, blah, 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 blah. And that post whatever interview still isn't off limits. And one guy got gallons of horse semen dumped on him.
What?
It was so...
It's like torture.
It's torture. And there was one guy who they were in a dark room for 10 minutes and just had people poking them with cattle prods.
What?
The electric cattle prods.
That is torture.
I don't know how you could ever subject yourself to that. That just feels crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I can't imagine.